The message arrived just as I tied the last ribbon on the porch wreath. The red bow sat a little crooked, which is how most things sit in December when the weather turns and the house remembers. I stepped back to look, wiping glitter from my fingers, and my phone buzzed against the windowsill where I'd left it near the succulents. "Don't come for Christmas," the blue bubbles said. Just like that. 4 words that took the air out of the hallway. Outside, a sparrow hopped along the railing like nothing had changed. I carried the phone to the kitchen and set it beside the cooling rack where sugar cookies waited to be iced. I filled the kettle and turned the flame low, letting the small sounds of water and heat braid themselves into a rhythm my breathing could follow. When the whistle rose, I poured the water over a bag of black tea and watched the string drift, then settle against the side of the mug. I didn't answer. Not yet. I touched the screen once and it brightened, showing the words again, as if to try them on a second time. My thumb hovered, then I pressed the power button and let the dark return. The house looked back at me. Stockings with names stitched unevenly from years ago hung from the mantel. Daniel's D sat a little higher because he'd tugged at it when he was 6, testing whether Santa was real or not. On the counter, a stack of recipe cards leaned in a rubber band, molasses cookies in my mother's hand, sweet potatoes in mine, gravy in my late husband's block letters with a note, "Stir slow." I traced the G in gravy, then set the card down. The tea warmed the ache but didn't erase it. I kept my seat at the table and let the first sharp feelings move through, like a winter gust rattling the storm window. I pictured Daniel, tired, pulled by obligations I couldn't see from here. I pictured myself showing up anyway, standing on a doormat uninvited. The picture told the truth I already knew. That would not be love. I slid open the sideboard drawer. Inside lay the folder that has followed me through 2 moves, and all the seasons since. Manila, a little softened at the corners, clipped shut with a fat silver clip. Deed, mortgage paid, property tax receipts. I placed it on the table next to my tea and the cinnamon roll I'd promised myself for later, and rested my palm on the cover. There are choices, I told myself. Things that don't shout but still speak. From the window I could see the wreath's red bow, still crooked. I straightened it with 2 fingers and left it crooked anyway. Then I turned my phone face down, slid the folder closer, and found a pen that writes on first try. Tomorrow, I would make a call and ask my questions. Tonight I would finish my tea. I stared at the blinking cursor where my reply should have been. It pulsed like a tiny metronome for an argument I didn't want to conduct. My thumbs typed, "Are you sure?" Then backspaced the letters away. Crumbs brushed from a tablecloth. The phone went heavy in my hand. Last Thanksgiving had been full of little things that turned themselves large. I'd said at the doorway, "Coats go on the hooks, please." The way I've said it for 30 years. An invitation to put down the day and come in warm. Tessa heard a command, not a welcome. Her mouth went thin. Her scarf stayed looped on her neck. Daniel felt the air tilt and stepped faster, carrying the casserole like a shield. We ate politely. The foil on the green beans never quite settled back flat. We talked timelines instead of feelings. When the baby got fussy, Tessa said, "She naps at 1." And I said, "Of course," too brightly. Daniel asked if I could send leftovers in labeled containers like a workplace memo. I found lids that matched and wrote neat notes in black marker, my handwriting trying to make peace. After they left, I saw I'd forgotten to put out the cranberry sauce his father loved. I washed the good platter twice, as if that could fix anything. Since then, the messages had been about parking, nap schedules, and which door to use. Nothing about how any of us were doing. I kept telling myself logistics were a bridge, that love sometimes rides on practical wheels. But it is a thin way to travel. By the coffee maker, the birth announcement still leaned in a frame, her name in pink script, Daniel's hand cradling a head no bigger than an orange. His eyes in that photo are gentled, unguarded. I touched the corner of the frame and felt my own jaw loosen. The cursor blinked again. I opened the thread, read his 4 words once more, and let the device rest face down on the counter. The kettle was still warm. I rinsed my mug, set it upside down on the drying mat, and took a breath that reached the bottom of my ribs. I could write something that defended me. I could list all the times I had softened my voice and measured my visits to the length of a nap. But there are words that make things better and words that make them worse. Screens are poor rooms for repair. I lifted the gravy boat from the shelf and wiped a dust line no one else would notice. I pulled the linen from the drawer and shook it over the table, then folded it again and put it back. Busy hands help ordinary sorrow pass through without gathering more. My phone buzzed against the cutting board, a softer tone than messages. Lila's name bloomed across the screen, my sister who knows how to hold a silence without filling it. I dried my hands and answered right then. Lila's voice arrived like a blanket pulled up to the chin. I pressed speaker and set the phone on the kitchen table beside the mug ring and a plate of cooling cookies. She let the quiet sit, the way she always does. "Tell me," she said, easy as steam. I read Daniel's message aloud. Saying the words scratched something tender, but Lila didn't gasp or scold. She listened to my breathing first, then to the story. Thanksgiving, the coat hooks, the nap schedule, the foil that never settled flat. "I'm so sorry," she said. "You don't have to prove your love by showing up uninvited. Keep your peace. Get your facts." "What facts?" I asked, uncapping a pen that had wandered to the junk drawer and back. "The calm kind," she said. "Talk to someone neutral. A counselor to help with the words, a lawyer to explain the house papers. Then decide from there." I pulled a yellow legal pad from the drawer with the rubber bands and batteries. On the top line, I printed 3 words in block letters: peace, facts, choices. I traced each once, slower, until the letters looked sturdy enough to lean against. She asked if I'd eaten. I told her about the cinnamon roll waiting like a bribe. We laughed about her wreath that refused to hang straight, always leaning like a cousin at a doorway. "Mine is crooked on purpose," I said. "I surrender to gravity." "Wise woman," she teased. Then softer, "You're allowed to step back. Love is not a performance, it's a posture." I let the sentence settle. I looked at the old deed folder on the chair beside me, its silver clip catching a stripe of afternoon light. The house felt like it had scooted closer to listen. "What would Dad say?" I asked. "He'd say, check the locks, make soup, and ask good questions," she answered, and we both smiled into the air we shared. "Will you pray?" I asked. She didn't clear her throat or make it fancy. "God, steady our girl. Give her a soft back and a strong spine. Guard her house and her tongue. Wrap Daniel and Tessa in patience. Make the next right step bright." I held the edge of the table while she spoke, and felt my shoulders drop a little, like a suitcase set down after a long walk. "Amen," I said, surprised by how much lighter that one word was when spoken out loud. "Eat something. Sleep," she added. "Call me after you make appointments." "I will," I promised. After we hung up, the kitchen returned to its small sounds, the hum of the fridge, the tick of cooling metal. I tore the top sheet from the pad and clipped it to the deed folder. Then I opened my laptop, cleared a space beside the cookies, and typed in the search bar, "real estate attorney near me." The screen glowed steady, and my breath matched it, small, calm, ready for next steps to take. Morning light laid a careful stripe across the deed folder. It made the silver clip wink like it knew something I didn't yet. I pulled the yellow pad closer, peace, facts, choices still written in thick letters, and opened my laptop. The search bar waited, patient. "Real estate attorney near me," I typed, and pressed enter. A list appeared, names with small headshots and office hours. I clicked one with reviews that mentioned words like patient, explains clearly. The receptionist answered on the second ring, her voice brisk but kind. "We can see you this week," she said. "Thursday morning at 10? I checked the calendar pinned on the wall above the desk, each square steady as a breath, and circled the time in green. "That works," I said. She took my email so she could send a confirmation and a list of what to bring. "Your ID, any existing documents, and your questions," she added. "Bring the questions." The email chimed a moment later. I clicked print and listened to the old printer warm itself up, then cough out a single page with the office address, parking instructions, and the name Mr. Hernandez. I slid the page under a paperclip labeled House, then pulled an index card from the drawer where rubber bands live with stray screws. At the top I wrote, "Questions." Underneath, small and careful, "Safety, for me to stay. Fairness, for later. Timing, so no surprises. Not revenge, only clarity." I read the list aloud once, so the room would hear me mean it. I packed the card into the folder with the deed, the tax receipts, and the photocopy of my driver's license I use for forms. The folder felt a little heavier, but in a good way, like a tote bag with library books. I laid it on the entry table with my keys and a pen that writes on the first try. The pen felt important. No scratching around for ink in a moment that needed steadiness. Before the day could run away, I scooped cookies into a tin and taped a note on the lid. "For drivers and neighbors, please take one." I set it on the porch bench beside the crooked wreath and watched a delivery van nose around the corner. The driver waved when he saw the tin. He took a cookie, lifted it in thanks, and the world tilted a fraction toward kind. Back in the kitchen, I wiped the counter and took my phone from the windowsill. I typed only, "I love you. I'm home if you want me." Then I put the phone face down without waiting for 3 dots or an answer that might take its time. Love can stand quietly in a room. It doesn't always need applause. I checked the weather for Thursday, jotted quarters for the meter on a sticky note, and tucked it into my coin purse. Coat on the hook by the door, shoes by the mat. Folder, keys, pen, wallet touched each in turn. I stood there a moment, looking at the small row of readiness I'd made. Tomorrow I would drive into town and listen well. The law office smelled like lemon polish and good paper. A ficus in the corner shone like it had been dusted with a paintbrush. I signed the clipboard, tucked my pen back into my bag, and sat in a chair that didn't squeak. On the side table, a bowl of mints waited in a neat spiral. I took one and let the cool bloom steady me. Mr. Hernandez opened the door with a small smile. Gray at his temples, sleeves neatly rolled, he had the look of someone who reads directions before assembling a shelf. "Come in," he said. "Bring your folder." I set the manila folder on the polished table and told him the short version first. The text, the holidays, the wish to act without anger. He listened like he had all morning. He didn't interrupt. He nodded when I paused, and when I reached for a word, he waited until I found it. "Let's talk tools," he said at last, pulling a legal pad closer. He drew 4 boxes side by side and labeled them in plain block letters. "Will," he said, tapping the first. "This says who receives what after you're gone. It doesn't keep anything simple while you're alive." He tapped the second. "Transfer on death deed, TOD. This names a person to receive the house at your death. It's simple but rigid." The third, trust, revocable. This lets you keep control now, organize things, and make changes. The fourth, life estate. You give future rights but keep the right to live there. He set the pen down. "These are tools, not weapons." "Tools," I repeated, feeling the word settle. "Tell me your goals," he said. "Security to stay," I said. "Clarity later. Reversible if I change my mind. No surprises. No messages meant to hurt." He wrote each phrase in the margin. "Good goals," he said. "Given that, I recommend a simple revocable living trust for your home. We would prepare a new deed that places the house into the trust. You remain trustee. You still live there, decide repairs, sell if you want. While you're alive, you can amend or revoke it. What does it say to my son?" I asked. "It says you're organized," he said, kind but direct. "It keeps decisions off your son's plate during a crisis. It's the calm choice." He slid a 1-page checklist across to me. What to bring back? Photo ID, current deed, property tax bill, the exact spelling of any names I might list as helpers later. "We can notarize here," he added. "Or you can use your bank if that's easier for you. Either way, we'll walk you through every line before you sign." "What about timing?" I asked. "We can draft this within a week," he said, checking his calendar. "How does next Thursday at 10 for signing sound? If we need to move it, we can." I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. "That works." He printed the engagement letter and another sheet titled, "Next Steps" in clean type. I signed where he pointed and tucked the papers into my folder. "Questions later are welcome," he said at the door. "You can change your mind at any time. Remember, tools, not weapons." "Tools," I said again, and the word felt like a handle I could actually hold. In the lobby, the ficus gleamed, and the bowl of mints was still in its spiral. I took one for the road, stepped into the bright hallway, and headed to the bank to make sure my ID and the notary plan were in good order. The lobby plants stood straighter than I did. Fiddle-leaf figs in white pots lined the windows, glossy and sure of themselves. I took a breath that matched the quiet hum of the teller line and stepped forward when the light above window 3 blinked green. "I need to double-check some records and make a notary plan," I said. "House documents." "Of course," the teller said, and guided me to a small glassed-in office. "Ms. Webb can help." Ms. Webb stood when I entered, a tidy woman with a cardigan the color of winter apples. "Let's get you settled," she said, motioning to a chair. She made a neat place on her desk with the heel of her hand, then took my driver's license. "We'll start with ID and names. The notary will care about exact matches." I opened my manila folder and slid out the deed copy and last property tax bill. "I want to make sure everything lines up," I said. "No surprises?" She compared the name on my license to the deed, eyebrow flicking briefly at my middle initial. "Do you sign with your middle initial?" she asked. "On legal things, yes," I said. "On recipes, no." We both smiled a little. "Good," she said. "Consistency matters for the notary." She typed quickly, nails soft on the keys. "Your address is current. Phone number still the best one?" I nodded. She made a few more clicks. "We can notarize here if you like, but most attorneys have a notary in office." "Mr. Hernandez does," I said. "Thursday at 10. Perfect," she said. "We'll make sure you're all set either way." She turned her monitor so I could see a small calendar. I can also pencil a backup notary appointment for you here, just in case something changes. Same day at 3. Please, I said, grateful for a second net. She slid a small stack of papers across a clipboard contact update. Signature card refresh. A sheet titled Notary Checklist with lines that felt like guardrails. Initial here, she said, tapping with a capped pen. I wrote the way I do for careful things, each letter clear. While she stamped a tiny date in the corner of the signature card, she glanced up. You're doing the careful kind of strong, she said, not a question. I felt the compliment land somewhere my shoulders could use it. That's what I'm trying for, I answered. She handed me a printed receipt and circled the backup appointment time. Bring this and your ID if you come here, she said. If not, you're still organized. I tucked the receipt into my folder, sliding it beside the property tax bills and a photograph I keep as a quiet reminder. Daniel at 8, holding a small fish on the dock, both of them shining with surprise. The paper edges whispered against each other when I closed the folder. Anything else today? She asked. That's enough, I said. Thank you for being calm. It's my favorite part of the job, she said, standing to shake my hand. Good luck on Thursday. Outside, the winter sun blinked through thin clouds, bright then soft again. I had time before heading home. The church was 3 blocks down, its bell tower an easy landmark. I adjusted the strap on my bag, felt the reassuring flatness of the folder against my side, and walked toward the bench I knew under the bell, where someone would sit with me in the quiet and help me keep my peace. The bench under the church bell kept its own slow time. The wood was worn smooth by coats and seasons, and a faint warmth still lived there from the noon sun. I sat with my folder tucked beside me. Pastor Grace spotted me and raised a mittened hand. Her scarf was moss green. She sat with a careful sigh, leaving a friendly inch of space, and waited. That is her gift. She let silence make room for truth. I told her everything, in the small order I could manage. The text, the crooked wreath, the bank, the appointment next week. While I spoke, she didn't fix her face into pity or advice. She nodded once, twice, the way ocean buoys nod when the water shifts beneath them. When I stopped, she rested her hand over mine. Forgiveness is not forgetting, she said softly. It's releasing the tug-of-war rope so you can rest. You can forgive and still keep your footing. She looked toward my house's side of town and back at me. Boundaries keep love from fraying at the edges. They make a clean hem. I don't want to punish anyone, I said. But I can't be invited to disappear. You don't have to, she replied. You can choose a kind boundary and a kind voice. Write him a letter. Paper slows the pulse. Say what is true and tender. Your love, your respect for their home, your plan to care for your own. Don't argue. Invite. I pictured my good stationery and the pen that writes on first try. I can do that, I said. 1 page. No barbs, she smiled. A letter is a door that opens without swinging into anyone's shins. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small folded card, the size of a playing card, pale blue with a sprig of olive printed in the corner. A blessing for thresholds, she said, placing it in my hand. We bowed our heads without ceremony. God, make her home a shelter, not a stage, she prayed. Give her peace in, peace out, and peace between. Guard her mouth, soften their ears, steady their feet. Light the next right step and dim the rest. The bell above us marked the half hour. Not loud, just enough to stitch the words into the afternoon. We sat another minute, watching a child tape a crayon star to the bulletin board through the glass. The wind turned a page in someone's forgotten hymnal and then settled. I slid the card into my wallet behind my driver's license, where important small things live. Thank you, I said, for letting today be simple. Simple is holy, she answered, patting the bench before standing. Text me after you mail the letter. I promised I would. Then I lifted my bag, felt the weight of the folder even and sure against my side, and walked home with the blessing warm in my pocket and a clean sheet of paper waiting on my desk. Under a soft lamp, the good paper waited. I smoothed my hand over the top sheet and uncapped the pen that never sputters. The living room was quiet, except for the clock's modest courage and the radiator's occasional sigh. I set my wallet with Pastor Grace's little blue blessing card beside the blotter, as if it could keep the corners kind. Dear Daniel, I wrote, letting each letter take its time. I love you. I respect your home. I will not come unless I am invited. I'm taking care of my home, so no one has to guess later. I paused, listening for any word that wore a thorn. I crossed out a phrase that sounded like proving a point and chose a softer sentence. I'm not angry. I'm learning how to rest where I am wanted. I added the ordinary truths that feel like warm bread. I'm proud of the father you are. I'm sorry for the sharp sounds I've made when I was scared. I want peace between us more than perfect holidays. If you want to talk, I'm here. No rush, no case to win. Just me. I didn't explain the trust or list the paperwork. Paper about paper rarely heals anything. I kept the focus on love and the boundary that lets it breathe. When the page felt complete, I signed with the looping signature your dad used to tease me about, and dated it cleanly. From the top drawer, I took a small photograph Daniel at 3 on his red tricycle, socks pulled up to his knees, front teeth missing and joy everywhere. I tucked it behind the letter, a gentle reminder that our story started in giggles and scraped knees. I slid both into an envelope, licked the seal, then pressed it shut with the flat of my palm. A winter bird tapped the window once and flew on. I wrote his address, added a stamp with a cardinal and a holly bush, and set the envelope on the entry table where mail goes out in the morning, one step at a time, like stones in a creek. On my phone, I opened our messages and kept it simple. I love you. I'm here. I watched the words arrive, blue on blue, and didn't wait for dots. I set the phone face down beside the lamp and angled the shade so light pooled softly instead of glaring. Then I opened my laptop and typed Community Center Holiday Lunch Volunteers. The sign-up page was cheerful without shouting. I chose the Christmas Day shift, 10 to 2, aprons provided, comfortable shoes recommended. I entered my name, clicked submit, and read the confirmation twice. The email dinged a second later. I printed it and clipped it under house, because sometimes hope belongs in the same folder as deeds. At the wall calendar, I drew a square around Thursday, 10 a.m., Mr. Hernandez sign. I added a note on a sticky. Quarters for the meter, leave early. Keys, pen, wallet, folder, they made their neat row again on the entry table, like a small parade of readiness. I rinsed my teacup, turned off the lamp, and let the house dim to its night self. In my bedroom, I set the alarm a little earlier than usual and slid between cool sheets. The blessing card's words looped in my head shelter, not stage until sleep found me easily, steady as breath. Tomorrow would come, and I felt ready to meet it. The notary's blue ink pen felt heavier than it looked. Ms. Chan set it on the conference table with care, as if we were about to sign a peace treaty instead of a stack of adult homework. The table itself shone like a still lake. I smoothed my palms on my skirt and took the breath Mr. Hernandez offered me with his small nod. We'll go page by page, he said. No rushing. He started with the trust, reading aloud in a voice that sounded like instructions for building something steady. He pointed to my name where it appeared as trustee, then again as beneficiary while I'm alive. This is revocable, he reminded. You can change it, update it, or dissolve it entirely. You stay in charge. Ms. Chan checked my driver's license, examined the photo, then looked kindly at my actual face. Middle initial matches, she said, and wrote my number in tiny, neat numbers on her journal. Sign as it appears here. Mr. Hernandez slid the first page toward me, his finger resting under the line with my name. This is the Declaration of Trust, he said. It says you're creating this and that you're the trustee. I signed, the pen warm in my hand. The blue ink looked calm against the cream paper. We moved on. He explained the schedule that lists what's in the trust today, just the house and the ability to add things later if I wish. He showed me a letter we could draft another day, my wishes, not binding but guiding. Each time a new page appeared, he summarized. This keeps decisions simple later. This keeps you living in your home now. This can be undone. The words made a small path through my chest, and I followed them. When we reached the deed, he turned it so I could read the anchor parts, the legal description that sounded like poetry written by a map. My name, the trust's name, the property's address I know as well as my own breath. This transfers title from you, as an individual, to you as trustee of your revocable trust, he said. You still decide repairs, still pay taxes, still hold the keys. He smiled gently. Still make soup in your kitchen. I laughed once, the sound surprised but welcome. Then I signed again. Ms. Chan leaned in, placed her notary seal just so, and pressed. The quiet thunk and the curl of raised ink felt like a door closing softly, latched but friendly. She dated, initialed, and added the neat stamp that always reassures me, as if a grown-up had checked our homework. Mr. Hernandez gathered the signed originals and set a copy in front of me, clipped and labeled. We'll record the deed with the county today, he said. You can take it yourself or we can courier. I'd like to take it, I said. Walking it over felt like part of the work, he nodded. Recorder's office is 2 blocks down, first floor. Take your ID. They'll stamp a receipt and send the recorded copy by mail in a week. Grief flickered. My husband's empty chair at every table where signatures mattered. Holidays rearranging themselves without asking. But steadiness held. I tucked the copies into my folder, zipped it closed, and stood. Ms. Chan handed me the blue pen. "For your notes," she said. I slipped it beside my index card of questions, now answered in clean margins. "Thank you," I told them both. "Tools, not weapons," Mr. Hernandez said, as if giving me the password to a gentler world. I stepped into the hallway, where the air smelled of winter rain and clean beginnings. Folder against my side, scarf looped once. I headed for the county building and the clerk's window, ready for the next small stamp that would make today official. The clerk's red cardigan became my favorite color that day. It glowed warm behind the glass, a small patch of cheer in a lobby lit by patient fluorescent lights. I took a numbered ticket from the dispenser and sat on a plastic chair that remembered 1,000 afternoons like mine. When my number blinked, I stepped to the window and slid my folder through the opening. "Recording?" she asked, voice gentle, not bored. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Deed into a trust." I added my driver's license and the checklist Mr. Hernandez had given me, the one with boxes like steady steps. She nodded, reading the bold title. Then the legal description that always sounds like poetry written by a surveyor. "We see these," she said, not unkindly. She reached for a rubber stamp and a date wheel, set them, and pressed the first page with a sound I felt in my ribs, authority without any raise of voice. She checked my ID against the names, her finger landing on the middle initial and then on my face. "Matches," she said, and slid the license back to me. A small printer hummed. She tapped keys with a rhythm that told me she's done this 1,000 times and still treats each paper like a story. "Here's your recording number," she said, circling it on a receipt. "You'll get the mail-back copy in about a week, sometime sooner." She attached a tiny strip with the timestamp that made the document feel real in a way ink alone never does. I took the receipt in both hands like a delicate ornament. "Thank you," I said. She smiled without prying. "You did the hard part already." "This is just the ink catching up." She slid a conformed copy back to me, my pages now wearing their new stamps like a sash. "Keep this in your folder until the official one arrives." I tucked the pages behind the clip with my careful papers. From the side pocket, I pulled my pen and drew a small square on the checklist next to record deed. I wrote the date and a single word beside it, recorded. The letters came out neat, steady. My breathing matched them. "Anything else?" she asked. "That's everything," I said. "You've been very kind." She shrugged the smallest shrug. "It's a good day when the paperwork makes someone less worried," she said, and straightened a stack already straight. The red cardigan caught the light. For a moment, it felt like the whole building warmed by a degree. I stepped into the hallway. Beige walls offered no commentary, which was oddly comforting. People moved past carrying their own folders, their own quiet errands. I lingered by a windowsill and slipped the receipt into the manila folder beside my driver's license, and a peppermint I keep for long mornings. The folder closed with a soft whisper. In the elevator, I let my shoulders drop and whispered a thank you no one else needed to hear. On the ground floor, the doors opened to cold air and a view of the blue mailboxes on the corner. I touched my bag to be sure of what was inside, the stamped envelope with Daniel's name and the small photo tucked within. The post office was only a short walk away. I tightened my scarf and headed there, ready to send the letter into the world with the same steady hands that had carried the deed. I spent Christmas in an apron and comfortable shoes, the kind with rubber soles that don't mind a spill. I buttoned my red sweater and tucked a clean dish towel into the apron string like a promise. The sky was pale as paper when I drove to the community center, the parking lot dotted with cars that looked like they'd arrived early to be useful. Inside, the kitchen was already warm. Steam fogged the windows, and the smell of onions and butter met me at the door. Volunteers moved in an easy line, hairnets skewed at friendly angles, chatter soft enough to hear instructions. "You're on gravy?" someone asked, handing me a ladle as if they'd known me for years. I nodded and took my station at the end, where plates paused for a moment of comfort before moving on. We worked like a choir that already knew the song. Trays slid out of ovens, foil peeled back with careful hands. The mashed potatoes held their shape. I learned the difference between a polite scoop and a generous one. A veteran stopped at the counter, hat tucked in his pocket, and told me about his dog, Buddy, who sleeps across his feet like a weighted blanket. "He's better than any pill," the man said, and his eyes watered in a way that made mine careful. A little girl with a pink ribbon in her hair offered me a candy cane from her pocket. "For your break," she whispered, grave as a nurse. When I tried to tuck it behind my ear as a joke, she giggled and asked for an extra roll. I slid one to her plate and tapped the candy cane in thanks, and it felt like a small treaty between us. Peppermint and bread. We served until the trays thinned. People said thank you and Merry Christmas, and God bless in equal measure. Someone's glove snapped. Someone else wiped a spill before anyone could slip. When the last plates were given and the last cups filled, we ate standing up. Paper plates, soft chairs pulled close to the warmth that service leaves behind. My shoulders, which had been holding their questions for days, lowered an inch I didn't realize they had left to lower. By late afternoon, I drove home under a sky the color of pewter. On my porch, a small lantern waited, brass sides and a glass door, with a narrow note tucked under its handle. "For light," it said in Mrs. Patel's careful script. She'd taped a tea light inside. I brought it in, set it by the window, and struck a match. The flame took its time finding itself, then settled. I sent Daniel a single message. "I love you." No pressure. The phone stayed quiet, and I let it. Silence doesn't have to be a verdict. Sometimes it's just a breath that takes longer. I ate a bowl of soup, washed the spoon, and turned off the tree. The lantern's glow kept a soft promise on the glass. The next morning, I took a slow walk, waved at neighbors tugging trash bins, and folded laundry that smelled like sun from the dryer. On the day after Christmas, just as the kettle began to sing again, my phone lit up and rang. Daniel's name moved across the screen. I steadied the mug in my hand and answered. The ringtone startled the winter afternoon into attention. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and glanced at the screen. Daniel. I answered on the second ring so he wouldn't think I'd been waiting with the phone in my palm, even though I had been nearby. "Mom, what is going on?" His voice was tight, the words braced for impact. "I'm here," I said. "I can talk." He exhaled into the line, the kind that fogs a car window. "I got your letter, and Mrs. Patel said she saw you at the county building. Did you change something with the house?" "I did," I said, plain as bread. "I put the house into a revocable trust. It keeps things organized. I'm still here, still in charge. It helps me stay safe and keeps paperwork simple later. It's not a punishment. It feels like a message," he said. I could hear the clink of a glass, the hollow sound of someone moving in a kitchen not their own. "It is a message," I said, steady. "The message is that I love you and I'm taking care of myself. I'm also keeping my promise about your home. I won't come unless I'm invited." He was quiet. Somewhere on his end, a cupboard door clicked shut. "Tessa thought..." He stopped, then began again. "We thought it meant you were cutting us out." "No," I said. "I'm choosing clarity. I can change my mind if something needs changing. Right now I need a fence, not a wall." He didn't speak for a full 5 seconds. I could count them with the kettle beginning to think about singing. "I wish you told me before you did it," he said finally. "I can understand that," I answered. I was trying not to drag you into my decisions, and I didn't trust myself to explain without making it a fight. I'd like to explain now. Maybe with someone neutral in the room so we don't slip into old grooves. "A therapist?" he asked, wary. "A mediator," I offered. "There's a community center that does family mediation. Just a structured conversation. Ground rules, a timer, tissues on the table. We can bring our calendars and our real words." He let out a small, unwilling laugh. "You and your real words." Then softer. "I don't want to be at odds with you." "Me neither," I said. "I want to know how to be your mother in this season without stepping on everyone's toes. And I want you to know I'm okay." "Okay," he said after a long breath. "A mediator. I can do that." He gave me 2 afternoons that might work, and I wrote them on the back of an envelope with the first pen I touched, ink a little scratchy and determined. "I'll call and set it up," I said. "I'll text you the time and address." "Mom, yes?" "I did say that thing about Christmas too fast," he said. "I was angry and tired. I don't want that to be the only thing you remember." "I won't let it be," I said. "Thank you for calling." We hung up before the softness could tangle. I stood a moment in the quiet kitchen, the lantern by the window making its small pool of light, the kettle now singing politely. I dialed the mediation center and spoke to a woman with a patient voice. We found a Tuesday at 3. When I hung up, I circled the date on the wall calendar in green and wrote, in small letters, "Talk well." Then I set a soup pot on the stove, chopped an onion slow, and let the sizzle say what I couldn't hold in words anymore. The mediator placed a box of tissues in the center without saying why. It sat among 2 glasses of water, a small timer, and a stack of pens, like an admission that words sometimes leak. The room was neutral on purpose, soft chairs, a round table, a clock that didn't tick loud enough to boss anyone around. Ms. Bell smiled the way nurses do when they've seen it all and still believe in recovery. "Welcome," she said. "Ground rules first." She uncapped a marker and wrote on a whiteboard in calm letters. "One at a time. Speak from your own experience. Assume good intent. No rescuing. We can pause. Daniel nodded, jaw tight. His knee bounced, then stilled when he noticed it. I folded my hands in my lap so they wouldn't try to tidy the air. Who wants to go first? She asked. I can, Daniel said, voice clipped, then softer. Tessa felt judged at Thanksgiving. The coats thing. The tone, it felt like we were walking into an old script where she's doing it wrong. And then I'm between you two. I hate that place. He glanced at me, then away. When I sent that text, I was mad and tired and thinking about nap schedules, not people. I'm sorry for the bluntness. He stopped. The tissue box stayed where it was, unneeded but understood. Ms. Bell nodded. Thank you. You said you felt caught between them. Can you name the fear under that feeling? That I'll disappoint someone no matter what I do, he said. That being a good husband means being a bad son, or the other way around. She wrote fear, disappointing someone either way. Thank you, she said. Mom? I looked at my son's hands, his knuckles not much different than when he learned to lace his shoes. The text hurt, I said. Being told not to come felt like being erased. The fear under it is that I don't have a place in your life unless I pass a test I can't see. I inhaled slowly. I also know I can make my voice sharp when I'm anxious. I don't want to repeat old scripts either. Ms. Bell wrote, hurt, erased, fear, no place unless perfect. She drew a line down the whiteboard and titled it, What We're Learning. Let's map the biggest friction points, she said. Marker poised. Short words. Tone, Daniel said immediately. Timing, I added. When invitations come late, my hope gets jumpy. Money, he said, cheeks flushing. Not as a request, just as a pressure on all sides. Surprises, I said. I don't like them. I handle change better with a little runway. She wrote each word in tidy rows. Tone, timing, money, surprises. She circled tone. What does kindertone sound like for each of you? We tried simple phrases. He said, Mom, we have a routine that works for the baby. I practiced, how can I help within your routine? We practiced timing. He'd give a window for visits a week ahead when possible. I'd say yes or no clearly without a paragraph of apology. On money, Ms. Bell didn't ask for numbers. She asked about feelings. I said I worry about being a burden and about emergencies I can't predict. Daniel admitted he guesses my finances are sturdier than they are because I don't complain. The marker squeaked. Feelings, not assumptions. When the timer gave a polite chime, Ms. Bell capped her marker. You both did brave, specific work, she said. I recommend one more step to support these agreements. A nonprofit financial counselor can help put numbers to the feelings, so assumptions don't do the talking. She slid a pamphlet across, the kind printed on matte paper with calm blues. They're neutral, practical kind. One session can change the tone of 10 conversations. Daniel took the pamphlet, thumb smoothing the corner. I can do that, he said. So can I said. Good, Ms. Bell replied. Writing next. Counselor on the board. We'll meet again after that to see what shifted. She reset the timer for 5 more minutes. Before you go, each of you offer one appreciation, small and true. Daniel cleared his throat. Mom, you listened without jumping in. That helped. Daniel, I said. You named your fear out loud. That was generous. We stood slower than we sat. The tissue box stayed unopened. I tucked the pamphlet into my folder next to my checklist, and we walked out with an appointment to make, and a whiteboard's worth of better words following us down the hall. The counselor unfolded a simple budget like a map to a trail we could actually walk. We sat at a round table in a nonprofit office painted a quiet blue, posters on the wall about budgets and breathing. Inhale for 4, exhale for 6. Her name tag read Mara, and her cardigan had elbow patches like a favorite book. Let's start with what comes in and what must go out, she said, sliding a worksheet between us. Columns, nothing scary. I handed over my folder. Pension statement, last property tax bill, the homeowner's insurance renewal, the utility summary with its bar graph hills. Mara penciled numbers in soft graphite. Pension, she murmured. Social Security. Okay. Property tax twice a year. She circled the line and wrote in the margin, set aside monthly. Insurance. Gas, electric, water, internet, groceries. She added a box labeled repairs and underlined it. What's looming? Hot water heater, I said. It wheezes when it wakes up. And the roof in a few years, Daniel added, surprising himself. Mara nodded, added both. These aren't emergencies if we plan for them, she said. They're seasons. We save toward seasons. Daniel leaned in, tracing the property tax line with his finger. as if it might smudge. "I didn't realize," he said quietly. "I thought taxes were just part of the mortgage. But there is no mortgage. There's still a guest who shows up," Mara said gently. "Right on time, twice a year." She turned the page. "Now feelings," she said, glancing at both of us like a teacher who knows the real assignment. "How does money talk sound at home?" I swallowed. "Tight," I said. "I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to sound needy or controlling. I feel pressure to make everyone happy," Daniel said. "Sometimes I assume Mom can cover extra groceries or a last-minute flight and forget that my assumptions are heavy." Mara drew 2 columns and wrote gifts on one side, obligations on the other. "A gift is freely offered, can be declined, and doesn't create debt," she said. "An obligation breeds resentment. Let's sort a few recent moments." We named them. The time I brought diapers and a casserole, gift. The time Daniel asked if I could just cover a dog sitter for their trip, felt like obligation. She wrote phrases we could use next time. For Daniel, "Is this a good month for X? What would be helpful versus stressful?" No pressure. I'm just asking. For me, I can contribute X's toward that. Or, "I can't this month, but I can make soup and babysit Saturday. Let me answer tomorrow." After I check my budget, she highlighted, "Ask before assuming." Then she printed a 1-page handout titled, "Conversations That Protect Relationships," and slid 2 copies over. "Put this on your fridge," she said. "It's not romance, but it's love." We added a small automatic transfer for the hot water heater fund. We scheduled a check-in with her for next month. 15 minutes just to keep the trail marked. Daniel tapped the edge of the worksheet. "I have questions about the trust," he said. Not defensive, just honest. "Like what happens if—" He stopped, searching for a gentle way through. "I'd like to hear it from the attorney, so I don't fill in blanks with guesses." "That's good practice," Mara said. "Facts calm feelings." "I'll call Mr. Hernandez and ask for a short speaker call," I said. I thumbed a note into my phone. "Call attorney, 15-min Q&A. The act of writing calmed me more than I expected. We gathered our papers. Mara clipped mine neatly, as if tucking in a child for a nap. "You're both doing the careful kind of strong," she said, the same words Ms. Webb had used. "It adds up." Outside, the air felt cleaner than when we'd gone in. On the sidewalk, Daniel held the door for me. "Could we do that call tomorrow?" he asked. "Late afternoon?" "Yes," I said. "I'll set it up and text you the time." Walked to our cars with the handout fluttering, like a small flag of truce in my bag and a plan to put facts where fear had been standing. The legal pad between us felt less like a shield and more like a bridge. Daniel sat at my kitchen table, elbows in, phone set to speaker. I wrote the date in the corner and drew a little box for notes, an old habit that calms me. When Mr. Hernandez answered, his voice carried the same steady warmth it had in his office. "Good afternoon," he said. "How can I help today?" "I wanted Daniel to hear it from you," I said. "Plain language about the trust and the house." "Happy to," he replied. "A revocable trust is simply a way to organize your affairs. Your mother is the trustee now. That means she's in charge. She keeps the keys, pays the bills, decides repairs, can sell if she wishes. Because it's revocable, she can change it or undo it while she's alive and well. Nothing is locked in concrete." Daniel nodded, even though Mr. Hernandez couldn't see. "What happens if—" He glanced at me, searching for a gentle path. "If Mom gets sick?" "Great question," Mr. Hernandez said. "The document names a backup helper, called a successor trustee, who can step in if your mother can't manage temporarily or permanently. That person follows instructions already written down, which keeps bills paid and the house cared for without the court stepping in. Your mother chooses that person and can change that choice anytime." I wrote backup helper in my margin and underlined it. "I chose Lila for now," I said to Daniel. "We can talk about it again next year." He rubbed his thumb along the edge of the legal pad. He swallowed. "Am I being cut out?" "No," I said before Mr. Hernandez could. "This isn't a punishment. It's a plan. It's a fence, not a wall," Mr. Hernandez added. "Fences mark where responsibilities live. They also have gates. Your mother's trust keeps her safe to stay in her home and keeps later decisions clear. It doesn't banish anyone. It reduces guesswork." Daniel exhaled, the way you do when you didn't know you were holding your breath. "What about Tessa? Does this make her—" "I don't know. An outsider? Families can be included in different ways," Mr. Hernandez said. "Your mother can write a letter of wishes, not a legal order, but guidance about keepsakes, hopes, and the spirit she wants carried forward. It's her voice to you both. She can also name how she'd like things handled if she needs help. Meals, house-sitting, holidays. It's a kindness to everyone." "I'm writing that letter," I said. touching the pen. Gentle, clear. You can both read it. Daniel nodded again. What happens next? Not much, and that's the beauty, Mr. Hernandez said. The deed is recorded. Your mother lives her life. If she wants, you two can schedule a review next year with me. We'll look at whether anything needs adjusting. No drama, just maintenance. I met Daniel's eyes. Let's do that. We'll go together next year. Put it on the calendar like an oil change. He smiled, relieved. Okay, that helps. Anything else today? Mr. Hernandez asked. No, I said. Thank you for being plain. My pleasure, he replied. Remember, this is about care and clarity. We ended the call. The kitchen felt lighter, the legal pad now full of words that didn't bite. Daniel picked up his phone, then set it down again. Soup on Sunday? I asked. Simple, noon. You bring bread. I'll do the rest. Soup on Sunday, he said. We'll come. He squeezed my hand once, quick and sure. I drew a little heart next to Sunday on the calendar and started a grocery list that began with carrots and ginger, letting the steady shape of a meal carry us forward. I set the table with bowls that never judge anyone's appetite. White stoneware, wide enough for seconds, if courage allowed. A loaf of bread cooled on the rack, its crust crackling in tiny size. The house smelled of carrot and ginger, orange zest grated in to make the flavor lift, and a whisper of garlic I rubbed on the cut sides of bread before butter. I put out cloth napkins, the faded ones with small stitched stars. The old scratch in the table, Daniel's third-grade compass pressed too hard into wood, ran like a tiny river between place settings. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands and opened it to both of them. Shoulders slightly hunched in the winter way, they paused at the threshold, taking the temperature of the air between us. Come in, I said, stepping back. Shoes by the basket if you want. Not a law. Tessa smiled at the basket, her scarf a soft gray. I hugged my son, then my daughter-in-law. We stood there a heartbeat longer than we used to, letting the edges round. Something smells wonderful, Tessa said. Carrot ginger, I answered. It's friendly to tired days. At the table we ladled soup, steam ribboning up. I passed the bread and a small dish of salted butter. Conversation found the low gear it needed. Daniel told me about a new project at work. Tessa showed me a short video of the baby clapping at a toy that made a silly honk. We laughed, relieved by the shared sound. We admired Mrs. Patel's lantern glowing by the window. We talked about the neighbor's new dog, fuzzy, ill-behaved, beloved. It wasn't a performance. It was soup. Halfway through, Daniel cleared his throat. Thanks for the invite, he said, not looking at me and then looking at me. You're welcome, I said, reaching for a small box I'd set by the salt. I realized I changed the door code during a panic week. I slid the box toward him. Here's a spare key and the new code on a sticky under the lid. He opened it. The key gleamed on a tag I'd labeled with my neat handwriting, Mom, front door. He turned the paper over, saw the numbers, tucked both into his wallet. Here's my new plan, I said gently. Call first and you are always welcome. If I'm out or resting, I'll say so. We'll try not to surprise each other. Deal? Deal, he said, relief visible in his shoulders. Tessa's eyes shined damp and she nodded. Thank you, she added. Clarity is kind. We ate the rest of our soup. I offered seconds. The bowls did not judge, and Daniel said yes. After, he carried dishes to the sink without being asked, and Tessa found the dish towel drawer like she lived there. We washed in companionable quiet, making a small team with good choreography. Rinse, stack, dry, put away. The rhythm soothed, an old song we still knew. By the door, coats on, I squeezed Tessa's hand. You're doing a beautiful job, I said, and meant it. She squeezed back. Daniel hugged me with the weight of a son who trusts the hug will be returned. Soup on Sunday is a good idea, he said. Maybe next time I'll bring dessert. Deal, I said again. Your father's chocolate cake is in the recipe box if you want to borrow it. He smiled at the mention. A soft flicker of shared history, and they stepped into the early dark, porch light humming. When the door closed, the house kept their warmth like a shawl. I dried the last spoon, hung the towel straight, and let the quiet settle without feeling lonely. On my desk, the trust binder waited, tabs tidy. I pulled a sheet of thick paper and wrote at the top, Letter of Wishes. The pen moved easily. Then I sent a quick text to Pastor Grace. Could we do a small blessing at the door in the new year? My calendar lay open to January, ready to receive dates that felt like kindness. The fountain pen scratched its way toward sincerity. I keep it for letters that ask me to be careful, the nib a little stubborn until my hand warms the ink. At my desk, the afternoon made a honey square on the wood. I pulled the trust binder closer, opened to the tab I'd labeled letters, and slid a thick sheet of paper in front of me. This wasn't a document, I told myself. This was my voice, written down so it wouldn't wobble later. Dear Daniel and Lila, I began, then paused, smiled, and added, and Tessa, because families widen like rivers. I wrote about fairness, not arithmetic, but heart. The quilt our mother stitched from old shirts. Please choose it together, or let it travel between homes. The ring with the blue stone your father bought on a road trip. If it fits no one, keep it in the drawer where sunlight finds velvet. The recipe box stays open to anyone who needs it. Return the cards with the smudges. Add your own. Take whatever books taught you to be kinder. Give away the knickknacks that only collect dust and stories nobody cares to carry. I wrote, I am sorry for the times my voice sharpened when my fear did. I am proud of the adults you have become, of the way you love, of how you try again after hard days. If you can, keep each other close. If you cannot, keep each other safe. When you tell stories about me, please let them end with laughter more often than sighs. I did not make a list of commands. I asked, when decisions tangle, make tea, call a pause, and remember you are on the same side. If an heirloom causes heat, set it aside for a season. Objects are patient. If money wants to boss you around, put your budgets on paper and let numbers tell the truth gently. Take care of the house until it has a new steward. Plant something small each spring to remember we are not finished products. I signed my name in the same loop your father used to tease me about. I wrote the date, and under it a line that read, I reserve the right to add more love later. I tucked a photo behind the letter, me with both of you on my lap, milk-drunk and astonished, then slid the page into a clear sleeve and clipped it behind the tab. The binder made a satisfying click when it closed. I set it in the safe beside the deed, then stood by the doorway and looked at the threshold where so many shoes have paused. On my phone, I opened a new message. Pastor Grace, could we bless the doorway this week? Nothing elaborate, just peace in, peace out. She replied almost at once. Thursday at 4? I answered, perfect. I placed the phone face down, smoothed the rug, and felt the house agree. In the quiet, even the hinges seemed to breathe easier. We stood in the doorway where comings and goings learn their manners. Winter light pooled on the doormat like a quiet visitor who knows not to track in snow. Pastor Grace slipped off her boots without being asked, and smiled at the shoe basket like it was an old friend. I brought the small bottle, she said, holding up a tiny vial of oil that caught the light and made a thin gold line on the glass. It doesn't take much, she added. That's the secret with blessings. We didn't make it formal. We stood shoulder to shoulder with the door open to the afternoon. The porch light, though unneeded at that hour, hummed soft as a beehive. I could see Mrs. Patel's lantern by the window inside, keeping its own gentle promise. Pastor Grace touched the doorframe with her fingers first, the way you touch a shoulder before a hug. Then she placed the barest shimmer of oil at the top, and along each side, as if underlining a sentence we wanted to remember. Peace in, she said, her voice made of warm bread and patience. Peace out. She paused, and I felt my throat release. Peace between. She let the words rest. No embroidery, no long speech, just the clean shape of what we needed. Amen, I whispered, and the house seemed to exhale with us. The edges inside my chest felt less sharp. Even the hinges, I imagined, would swing smoother for a while. Your home is a harbor, she said after a moment, wiping the extra oil with a small cloth she pulled from her pocket. Harbors do two things. They shine a light, and they keep rules about who comes in and how. Both are love. The light says, you can find your way back. The rules say, come in safely, and don't bump the boats. I glanced at the shoe basket, its braided rim slightly frayed where it always catches sleeves. So the shoe basket is a rule. She laughed, and so did I. It's a kindness disguised as a rule, she said. Fewer stomps, less grit, more peace. That counts. I told her about Sunday soup, about the spare key and the new plan. Call first. Always welcome. She nodded as if arranging flowers I'd already chosen. That's your harbor chart, she said. Clear enough to follow, gentle enough to hold. We stood there a little longer, letting the doorway feel different, which it did, wider somehow, and kinder. She asked after the hot water heater. I told her about the fund I'd started with Mara's help at the nonprofit. You're building quiet safety, she said. It shows. When she turned to go, I walked her to her car. The cold pinched our cheeks. Our breath made soft clouds. Thank you, I said, my hand on the doorframe as if to keep the blessing from blowing away. It will stick, she said. Blessings like to live in ordinary wood. She tapped the frame lightly and smiled. Text me if you need a second coat. I watched her drive off, the street simple and gray. the kind of day that keeps secrets and soups well. On the way back in, I pressed my palm to the oiled wood, felt the faint smoothness there, and let gratitude move through like warm tea. Inside, I straightened the shoe basket and picked up 2 mittens that had missed it by an inch, then set the kettle on. On New Year's Day, the neighborhood sends a text about a short afternoon walk. Hats, scarves, no hurry. I answered yes. The calendar turned its page with a soft flip, and I penciled in small plans. A walk, a Sunday soup, a visit with the babies earlier in the day. The house held the light and the rules both, and my chest felt roomy enough to hold hope without squeezing it. The calendar wore hearts where the question marks used to live. I drew them in pencil, small and steady, around 2 boxes. Christmas Eve dessert at Daniel and Tessa's. Christmas Day soup at noon at my place. A year of Sunday soups and clear invitations had softened the edges between us. We kept our harbor lights on, and our rules simple. Call first. Ask before assuming. Leave while we're still glad. The trust sat quietly in the safe like a well-labeled binder, unchanged and unthreatening. It was a map in a drawer, not a warning on a door. I'd added a line to my letter of wishes in spring. More love later, I promised myself, and then gone back to watering the basil. Mara's budget worksheet lived under a magnet on my fridge, and the hot water heater fund had done its quiet job. A man named Earl installed the new one in July while I made him lemonade, and took a silly photo of the old tank rolling down the driveway like a retired astronaut. On Christmas Eve, I tucked my late husband's chocolate cake recipe into a slim folder and went to Daniel's house with a tin of cinnamon stars and a ribbon around my wrist, so I wouldn't forget to leave early. Their living room glowed with soft lights, and a paper chain the baby, now a full toddler, kept trying to wear as a crown. Tessa's mother set out plates. We traded polite compliments about frosting and naps as if passing cards in a friendly game. When tension fluttered once, a nap that didn't happen on schedule, we used our phrases like life vests. "Do you want quiet help or no help?" I asked. "No help," Tessa said, grateful. I pocketed my offer without bruising it. Daniel, flour on his shirt and pride on his face, held up a cake he'd baked from his father's card. The layers listed a little and nobody cared. "I wanted to try," he said, and he cut me the first slice like he was 14 and learning to shave. "Thanks for sticking with us this year," he added later, rubbing the back of his neck. I reached up and swiped a pretend smudge from his cheek the way I used to, and he laughed despite himself. The next day at noon, my house welcomed them with bowls that didn't judge and bread that cracked in friendly sighs. Shoes found the basket without commentary. We ate carrot ginger soup and passed a dish of sliced oranges studded with cloves, because smell can be a tradition too. When conversation wobbled toward plans for next year, I said, "Let's pencil and be flexible," and we left it at that. Clear middle, soft edges. Through it all, the trust binder stayed in the safe. The letter of wishes tucked behind its tab, quiet as a heartbeat. It held no drama, only directions, like a recipe card that begins with preheat oven and ends with let cool before slicing. Before dusk on Christmas Eve, after hugs and a small exchange of leftovers container for cake plate, I slipped on my coat and picked up my tin. Tessa squeezed my hand at the door. "See you tomorrow at noon," she said. "Call first?" I grinned. "Always." I walked to my car with my scarf tucked close, the cold making my breath into small clouds. When I slid behind the wheel, the day had already begun to blue at the edges. I turned on the radio low and hummed along to a song my husband used to hum off-key. The road home was familiar. The turn past the laundromat, the slow roll by the park swing set now empty, and my porch light winked at me from half a block away, steady as a promise. I drove toward it, ready to settle into my chair and let the evening rest me. The porch light hummed like a lullaby only the house and I could hear. I balanced a cup of chamomile in both hands and stepped out to the top stair, where the winter air was crisp enough to make the steam visible. The street was quiet, one car easing past, a neighbor's wind chimes speaking in soft questions. Inside, by the front window, Mrs. Patel's brass lantern threw a small golden square onto the carpet, as faithful as a night nurse. I sat on the wicker chair that has learned the shape of me. The cushion sighed and settled. From here I could see the wreath's red bow, still imperfect, still right. The blessing oil Pastor Grace brushed on the doorframe had disappeared into the wood weeks ago, but sometimes I swear I can smell a hint of something warm when I touch the jam, the way you can still scent summer on a sweater if you close your eyes. The tea tasted like flowers convinced into quiet. I let it move through me, unhurried. My mind wandered the softest path, babies and casseroles, laughter that knocked forks askew, Anger that rose fast and left slower. Apologies that stitched places I thought were torn too wide. A year can do gentle things when you tend it like a plant. Water, light, a turn toward the window now and then. Through the open sliver of the door, I could see the hall table and the tidy row I've come to trust. Keys on their hook. Wallet zipped. The little blue blessing card tucked behind the family photo. In the bedroom closet, the safe held the trust binder and the recorded deed. Exactly where they belong. I don't check them every day anymore. Knowing they're there is the kind of quiet that lets me sleep. The phone in my pocket was warm from my leg. I lifted it, opened our thread, and typed what I've learned is enough. Good night. I love you. Within a minute, a sleepy heart returned, and I pictured Daniel putting his phone face down on a nightstand ringed with water glass halos, turning to tuck a blanket around a small foot. I didn't need more. The heart was a porch light of its own. I finished the tea and stood, bones happy to be ordinary. Inside, I rinsed the cup and left it upside down on the drying mat. I straightened the shoe basket out of habit and smiled when a tiny sock peeped from its corner. A relic from last week's visit, proof that homes collect the best kinds of lost and found. I flicked switches in a small farewell. Living room, off. Hall lamp, off. Porch light on for a little longer. At the safe, I rested my hand on the cool metal and whispered, "Thank you," though I wasn't sure whether I meant the box, the plan, the day, or all of it together. Then I locked the door, slid the chain, and stood for a moment in the quiet that follows good choices. Upstairs, the bed waited with its dependable ordinary. Folded quilt, soft cotton, the indentation where sleep finds me fastest. I texted Lila a simple, "We're okay," and set the phone on the nightstand face down. In the dark, the house settled and answered with its own small sounds. Heater sigh, wood tick, the far-off murmur of someone walking a dog. I pulled the covers up and tucked one hand under the pillow, the way I have since childhood. Gratitude rested under my ribs like a warm stone. I let my breath match the house's, slow and patient, and drifted toward a sleep that didn't need to earn itself.